know what part of marketing you want to get into. So do you want to just do advertising because somebody told you that you can make tons of money doing advertising, right? Or is it doing the creative side where you want to do photo shoots and you want to build brochures and you want to do, websites and that kind of thing? Like, know what aspect of it you really want to do. There's even the data analytics. I mean, that is part of marketing. It's, super geeky with the numbers side of things. UI and UX, so interfaces and experiences and type of thing. Events, there's so many different aspects of it that when you start out, when you get out, you'll probably be, some marketing associate, some, that level of thing.
Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. So let's get into this. How'd you get into acting?
Oh my gosh. So when I was a kid, my mom said that when I was like 5 years old, I would go out and just sing to people, on the street, just walking by, just being a goofball or whatever it was, right? So that ended up turning into, not that directly, but in high school, right? I was doing acting. I was in all the plays, that kind of stuff. I was in choir. I just really enjoyed all of that. And my goal actually was to go to USC or UCLA after high school, but I didn't have the grades to do that. I didn't have the money to just go and I'm from Minnesota, so I couldn't be an out-of-state resident and just, go there. And so I was trying to figure out how to do this. And I was already doing radio voiceover stuff in high school.
Hard to believe with your voice.
Thanks. Well, I did say that half of us sound really good today.
There you go.
And then, so what I ended up doing was my dad was in the Navy, and so that was always a possibility, right? But I wouldn't say that it was like, oh, I'm going to go into the military right away. And do you remember what was the movie with Robin Williams where he was it Good Morning Saigon? Where he's the
radio DJ?
Yes. Good Morning Vietnam, Saigon. I just mixed two things together. Right. So I had seen that and I was like, oh, radio work? I could go do this. I'm going to go into the Army. I'm going to, go into the radio thing. And so I went to the recruiter. And they said, yeah, no, that really doesn't work like that. You can come in, you can be a grunt, and then if you get lucky, maybe you can, get into things. And I was like, okay, no, thank you. So I walked next door.
So are you actually saying that there was a recruiter who was honest with you?
Yeah, I guess
as
he
opposed
was.
to like, yeah, sure, just sign here.
Yeah, as soon as you sign, we'll figure it all out. And so I actually went next door because it was that one of those where the row, I don't know if they even still have that, but it was the row of recruiters, right? And I went to the Navy guy. And he said, well, we don't have anything like that, but, what we can do is have you take the ASVAB, et cetera, and we'll see what they offer you. And then you can choose at that point what it is, if you want to go in or not, type of deal. And I thought that was honest. And I guess I've always liked the challenges. And so the challenge is saying, well, let's see how good you are, like how well you'll do on this test, right? And I did well on the ASVAB. And so I went to the recruiting station, right? And they offered me this job and they said, hey, how would you like to go hunt for submarines? And if you're physically qualified for it, once you get through aircrew school, then we might ask you to be a rescue swimmer. And I was a competitive swimmer in high school. And so I was like, jumping out of helicopters, for a job. Are you going to pay me to do this? Let's go, right? I actually remember calling my dad. He's a private pilot. And I said, Dad, they want to, they're offering me this job or get to fly around in helicopters and whatever. And he's like, take it. And my recruiter was the same thing because I got to call him too. And he's like, take it. It's an amazing job. So, anti-submarine warfare operator. And I know they've changed this since then, but it was the only operational rate in the Navy. So it had some cachet along with it, blah, 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 blah. So this turned from acting into now I'm in the Navy.
I'm letting you go. We'll figure it out.
Right. So this is the, you make plans for life
And then they never happen. And
then things like come at you that you didn't expect, and how well you can kind of dance around that.
Right.
That's what this was.
So as a young kid, you were leaning towards the acting or entertainment industry.
Yeah.
And just took you a while to get there.
Yeah. So it kind of came back around, but it took a different form than I expected. So I've been in marketing almost my entire career and done quite a bit of, acting, it's voiceover work and that kind of thing along the way. And what's interesting about that, why I say it takes a different form than you expect, is that, when people think about being an actor, they think about, I'm going to go be Tom Cruise, right? That kind of thing.
Right.
But there are so many other ways that you can kind of scratch that itch, right? So even in marketing, what I was able to do was, let that creative side of me flourish and create videos and audio things and whatever, right? Many of which I was either directing or when you're bootstrapping stuff too, right? I was in them, because, hey, I'm cheap talent because it's me. This is great.
I don't have to pay anybody.
This is sign the waiver. Here you go. Done. Yeah. So it just kind of came around that way. And, so I'm probably skipping a step, but eventually I ended up here in California, but I started out in Minnesota, went kind of all around the country, it seems, and then ended up back here. And this is where I had originally intended to go.
So you eventually made it.
So I eventually made it. 2007 is when I came out here, moved to Redondo Beach first and lived in South Bay and that kind of thing before I moved down here to Orange County.
So now that we've already gone into multiple different directions, let's kind of reel this back in. So you grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Big family, small family?
Small family, just one brother.
And your dad was military the entire time you've grown up?
No. He was in the military. It was during the Vietnam era. He was in for, I think, 3 years. I'm second generation, though, because my grandfather was in the Army during World War II. And Battle of the Bulge, Purple Heart, that whole thing. So,
but even still, with 2 generations of military service, growing up, you weren't really leaning towards military.
Well, it's weird because it wasn't like a thing that was like, oh, you should go in, everybody, it's your duty, that kind of thing. It was just part of the ethos of my family, I think.
Did your brother serve?
No.
Okay.
No. So my parents weren't really the type that said, well, you should do this or you do this. They let us do what we felt like we were doing, or needed to do or wanted to do, good, bad, or otherwise. Right. And so I found my own way, and that way happened to include the military. And I think if he hadn't been in, then I probably would have had a different position on it,
right? Maybe
because a lot of people, you run into. I remember when I was in high school talking to friends, and they're like, "The military? Why would you want to go do that? You go kill people and blah blah blah."
So, what year are we talking about that you went into the military?
89.
Okay, so you're not talking about a time period where military service was on the top of everybody's list,
right?
Peacetime,
Yep.
When you went in, obviously they made you this great offer. Hey, go jump out of flying helicopters and save people.
Yeah.
Were you thinking a career, or was it a short stopgap?
No, it was totally a way to get money for college. That was my thing. The GI Bill, get in, do my time, and get out. And it was a 5-year contract for that job. There were quite a bit of schooling, almost I think 1.5 years of schooling before I even got into a squadron. The GI Bill at that time was only, I think, $10,200. It was so little.
Pre 9/11, post 9/11.
Oh my gosh! I'm like, can I please have some of that post 9/11 money, please? Yeah.
So 5 years jumping out of helicopters.
Yeah.
At any point in time, did you think, maybe I will extend this or make it a career?
Yeah. So, when you get to that point where they're saying, okay, would you like to re-enlist or not? And I believe mine was a 6-year contract I was going to have to sign to stay in. And there was a $25,000 signing bonus that I would have gotten as well. So it was, pretty significant. But the thing is you're in for 5. If you do 6, it puts you over the hump, right? Now you're in, 11 years, and then you might as well stand. So it was this point in my life where I was like, this decision is I'm going to be in for 20 if I do this, if I re-enlist. Right. So that's why I didn't. Plus, I had some other things going on that were kind of tugging at me. So
business-wise or personal?
Yeah, business-wise.
So were you already thinking about the marketing world at this point, or what were you thinking as your transition at that point?
Okay, so this is my wild ride.
Uh-oh.
Right. So I have always been, I hate saying it, we all used to call it extreme sports, right? So I was a skateboarder growing up, and I remember building my own snowboard and all that.
I might be the only one thing in this, but Minnesota and skateboarding doesn't.
Well, not like in a California way, right? But it was different because it was back in, like 88, 87, 80, like it was just different. And I think I was doing that whole like California dreaming thing, like, oh, that's what they do. I can't surf. I had bought a surfboard from a buddy because I wanted, that lifestyle. I had a buddy who used to live in California, had moved to Minnesota for whatever reason. I bought the surfboard from him. I would sit on the surfboard in the lake and just pretend.
Hey, it works.
Yeah. Anyway, so long story short. So
you don't have to shorten any stories.
Okay, great. I started rollerblading. Okay, now many people might not know this, but rollerblading actually started in Minnesota.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So Scott Olson and his brother, they were doing it as a training tool for hockey.
Okay.
For ice skating, right? And they started in Minnesota, and a buddy of mine who was also from Minnesota had some rollerblades. I'd never done it before, but again, I was a skateboarder, I was snowboarder, that kind of stuff, right? And at this point, I'm living in Jacksonville, Florida, and he's got these skates, and he's not using them. We happen to be the same size, so I borrow them from him, and I'm suddenly skating around. I'm doing tricks in the parking lot. Just every minute I'm not in the barracks, I'm skating.
This is probably a normal question. Were you an ice skater from when you were a kid growing up?
I'm from Minnesota.
Okay. So the transition to rollerblading probably wasn't that much of a stretch for you.
Yeah, no, right. The motions were all there. But where I went kind of down the rabbit hole on that one was that I saw the connection. Remember, that would have been like 90 when I started doing that. And at this point, if you skated on the boardwalk in Jacksonville Beach, I remember having a lady come up and saying, "What are those? What are those? My daughter's a figure skater. She would love those." Then nobody had any idea what inline skates were, or Rollerblade, the company, or anything like that, right? So one of the oldest skate parks in the country, Kona Skate Park in Jacksonville, is there. It's this great skate park. I don't know if it's still there, but I hope it is. And so I started taking my skates there, and they were like, "We don't know what these are, but sure, you're gonna pay us? Yeah, come on in, go." And I started doing stunts and tricks and making up my own names for things and whatever, because I didn't know what to call it. And I was just basically taking skateboard tricks and going, "How can I do this? I got skates on. I can jump so high. It's amazing." So the reason this is important, why rollerblading is important to this story, is
you were doing it in UDT shorts?
Well, I don't even joke, because it was the early 90s. So, and I have those shorts. So I skated all over the world. I took my skates with me when I deployed. And so I skated in Athens. I've skated all over the place. And I got really, really good. And I was working, I got my instructor certification for rollerblading. There was such a thing back in the day. And I started teaching.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the point is here, I got really good, and people wanted to pay me to skate.
I'd never heard that there were actually rollerblading classes. I could see like 20, people showing up. Teach us how to rollerblade.
No, for real. For real. I had people.
How do I stop these things?
Yes. Yeah. The IISA, they call it, the International Inline Skating Association. So I started teaching at this surf shop in Jacksonville, Florida. And so we then, I started a little stunt team, because I was like, hey, we can do this, because there was a team Rollerblade was starting to do stunt shows, and they were getting all the press. They were getting TV commercials and things. And I'm like, why don't we do stunt shows? It'll promote the surf shop. We can go around and do all these things. And so I put together this little team of people that also skated, and we started doing all these stunt shows and things. So at the end of this 5 years, I was doing all this, and I was really doing well. I know it sounds so weird to say even as I roll back and think about it, but I had this vision that I could then go, because I was performing, right? So that was scratching that itch again, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm from Minnesota. I can just go back to Minnesota. I'm already really, really good at this. And I bet I can get a job at Rollerblade and then turn that into something. But
did you know the guys who created Rollerblade prior to that? Just the fact that they started in Minnesota.
Right. Like I knew where it was. I knew I had a base operations because my, family was from there. And it was a total roll of the dice. I didn't know anybody there.
And what were you looking to do with them as from a business perspective? I had
no idea.
Okay.
I had no idea. All I knew is that people seemed to think that I had something that they wanted to pay for. And I was a really good instructor. And it was just that sweet spot time, right?
In those early days, were you already pulling the stopper off the back of them, or did you keep? Okay.
Oh yeah. No, I'd use that to teach people, and then it was gone. So, so I showed up at I had no job, right? So I had gotten married along the way, dragged her up. She was a Florida girl. Dragged her up to Minnesota, without me having any knowledge of what job I was going to do. Right? It saved up a little bit of money. Just totally rolling the dice on, I'm going to get a job at Rollerblade.
So you are a born natural marketer. You got a woman to marry you with no job and said, let's go to Minnesota from Florida.
Yeah.
I want to know how that sales pitch went.
Yeah. Well, she actually, because when you get so she transitioned out, she actually stayed with my parents and came out like 6 months beforehand. She came out in the middle of winter. Okay. She bought a snowmobile. Right? Like at the call, it's like, I bought a snowmobile. So she fell in love with it. But, so I show up. So I get up there and, I found out that Rollerblade was doing a demo day, in one of those parking lot things, right? At at kind of a surf skate, shop. Actually, surf wouldn't be accurate because it's in Minnesota. Wakeboard and whatever. Anyway, ski, all this stuff, right? In Wayzata and Wayzata, Minnesota, right by Lake Minnetonka. Anyway, so I show up and I do, they had a ramp out there and some people were just skating, having a good time. And I show up and I huck off this thing and do a flip, right? And all of a sudden it was like, what? And the newspaper was there and they're taking pictures of me and the Rollerblade guy rep was there. And so we started talking and he's like, hey, how would you like to do this and go teach and blah, 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 blah. And so I ended up driving the Rollerblade van, which in the early 90s was awesome.
Did it look like a rollerblade or did they decorate it to look like a rollerblade?
No, it was a black cargo van with Rollerblade like emblems, like the little boot with the wheels on it all over the place on it. And this is how big rollerblading was, if you don't remember or you're not old enough to know. There were fruit snacks, like those little juice fruit snack things in the shape of rollerblades that had the Rollerblade logo all over it. There was a Hot Wheels car that had the Rollerblade van that I was driving on it. Like this thing was everywhere in pop culture.
Well, you brought up hockey and the fact that Rollerblade started as the off-season workout for ice skating. From somebody who grew up in California, when the rollerblade thing, exploded, so did roller hockey. Mm-hmm. I mean, everywhere you looked were these roller hockey rinks were going up. Kids were playing it like crazy, and then it just kind of went away.
And it's still, a lot of people still play roller hockey. A lot. I think the point is that back then you saw the meteoric rise, and then when it leveled off, then you kind of got used to what this level was, right? Because there's a lot of people that play. There's high school teams. There's all kinds of stuff going on to this day in roller hockey. But there's also much more. There's a lot more ice rinks.
Okay.
Around, right? So ice time's more accessible. That's always been the problem with ice hockey, even in Minnesota. Ice time, expensive, hard to get, limited. Minnesota, we played pond hockey a lot, but
It just seemed, from my perspective, and granted, I wasn't deep in the rollerblading world. Yeah. It seemed like it went from, you saw it everywhere. You saw the roller hockey rinks popping up all over the place. And then all of a sudden you didn't see kids on rollerblades. You didn't see the roller hockey rinks as much, or maybe I just wasn't looking. Maybe it was one of those things. It became so common that it stopped being abnormal to see it.
Yeah. I think what you stopped seeing was the beach roller hockey thing. Like, it used to be, you go in Venice Beach and like they would have like taken part of the parking lot and turned it into like a roller hockey area.
Right.
And, like, everybody, you'd see people going on the boardwalk with sticks and that kind of stuff. But so interesting you bring up hockey, because I turned that rollerblade experience into a job at Nike in their startup division. And one of our projects was hockey products.
Now, did that come from your own hustling, or was that just right place, right time opportunity?
It was a little of both. So certainly if I hadn't been, I was so geeky about this that I would argue that I was maybe one of the best in the world, like most knowledgeable about skates, how to build them, how to make accessories for them, because I was constantly breaking them. So I was building accessories. I actually started a business where we were putting pieces on the skates, because if you did all the tricks, right,
you'd break the frames and stuff.
Yeah, you'd shatter these glass-filled nylon frames, and so they just weren't designed for this yet. Eventually, the industry caught up, but so we were constantly like bolting on stuff, or how do we, do these things without destroying the wheels, the skates, etc. So I was so into it that a guy who happened to be a consultant for Nike that lived in YZ, that same place where I was, right, met me and thought that I had the passion, the knowledge, not necessarily the experience, right? But I knew enough about that specific thing. I was very, very good at a very narrow, finite kind of thing. And so he suggested me to Nike, and they were starting a new division called the equipment division at the time. And there was a time, believe it or not, where Nike was really, they did apparel and they did footwear, and that was kind of their thing, right? And they had really kind of maxed out on, or saturated the market on footwear and apparel. Like the growth curve for them was leveling
starting
off.
To flatten.
Yeah. And so so the notion was, hey, let's start getting into other things. This is the Tiger Woods era, right? They'd tried hockey before with Gretzky back in the day, but they bought Bauer from Canada, the hockey company, if you don't know. And so it was a little different footing. And then on top of it, because of the whole inline skating thing, they were able to say, hey, well, if we capitalize on this, we'll make a Nike skate that can both do inline skating and do hockey, right? We'll put
kind of like a hybrid.
Well, no. It was, you basically take the same boot.
Oh, okay.
And you just change it out. It wasn't that the consumer could do that. There was a company that did that, but it was just that it wasn't a stretch to say, hey, if we're going to go after hockey, we can go after hockey in both settings. Without a massive.
So from Nike's perspective, it was simply, we'll design a boot. These 50 will slap a blade on it. These 50 will slap wheels on them.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the nuances of it. This is where I start getting a little crazy on it. But so that division, we were basically doing everything that hadn't been done before at Nike. So they were hiring people that had experiences that were outside of their current knowledge base, or at that time, the current knowledge base, right? So I came in and did accessories and protective gear. So I did the first Nike hockey glove, first Nike hockey helmets, volleyball knee pads. I know it's not hockey, but we were doing all kinds of things, right? So hockey bags, inline skate protective gear, a whole bunch of other things. So that's what I was brought in to do. But we were doing timepieces, eyewear. We were even looking at snowboards, and that's when Nike skateboarding was starting up. All that stuff.
To go back a little bit, at this point, do you have any formal training or education in product development, marketing, anything at all?
No. My dad was a mechanical engineer. He's retired now, but so I grew up in this house where we were always making things. And so that for sure helped me, right? Because I didn't have that fear of, I don't know how to do this. Like I'm very solutions oriented. So, but still, I wasn't going in there saying like, oh, I graduated from here and there. No, like I'm an ex-Navy guy that can skate really well.
And so what year are we talking about that you went to work for Nike?
So this is 97, 98.
So just an off-topic question or related to it. Fast forward to today. With the experience you had then, could you have gotten the same job with Nike, do you think? Or do you think Nike's grown beyond that to where you would need formal training and education?
Yeah. So a takeaway on this is that Nike is one of these companies, and I think other companies are figuring it out now, but where your passion is critical, right? It's team fit, it's your dynamic, it's something about that X factor in you. The education is less important. It's about what you bring to the table and how you're going to amp up the rest of the team and the organization and have a team fit. So today I'm going to take a stretch here. Today I could get the same job if I had the same depth of knowledge in the specific thing that they were looking for, like they were at that time.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that if somebody wants to go work at a Nike, for example, you have to be arguably like one or two or top 5 in the world at that thing. They hire athletes. They hire people that can do things that other people can't do.
So if you've got a particular passion for something, that can overcome, or passion combined with a extreme breadth of knowledge related to it, that can overcome the need for formal education or formal training.
Right. But it is one of the few companies that I think recognize that, or at least historically have. We get so many people that get overeducated early in their lives, right out of high school and go and get their masters and all that right away. I'm thinking if that's going to be your opening into something like that. But the factor that companies like Nike and even I would argue probably Oakley or any of those sports specific companies are really an easier one for me to talk about because I know them well. They want people that are living what they're selling.
Right. So then jumping forward a little bit, you do have college education or a college degree now. What was it that motivated you to go to college?
So I realized along the way that I needed to backfill that part of it, right? So the problem was I had run so fast with that I didn't stop. And here's where I made my first career blunder. So
you made more than one?
Oh yeah. So I was so full of myself at Nike that when that came to an end, because with that ride, what happened was the Nike stock was taking a hit. We were in new divisions. So they started parting out. They said, well, we're going to give this stuff to this person. So I took my nice severance package and I said, I had started interviewing at Adidas and other companies. And I was like, no, I'm going to go consult. I'm going to be a consultant. I'm going to be entrepreneurial. I'm going to do my own thing.
Own boss.
And I'll be my own boss. I'm going to make so much money. It's going to be ridiculous, right? And that didn't really work out the way I thought it was going to. But and I said, I'm going to go back to Minnesota. I'm going to do it there because that's,
So a question I was going to ask, did you have to relocate to Oregon?
Yeah, well, they relocated me, but yeah.
What was that move like? How'd you end up liking Oregon compared to Minnesota or Florida?
Portland is great if you can get used to the weather. So here's my funny story about Portland. First of all, I didn't realize in the house hunting trips that I'd gone on, I didn't realize that you could see the mountains. And being from a flatland state like Minnesota, like the mountains are this, whoa, these are so cool, type of thing. And so there was one day, and I think it was October, the skies had cleared up a little bit. I could see Mount Hood as this perfect mountain, right? I was like, this is so amazing. But I remember seeing the grooves in the road, like on the freeway. And I was like, what are those grooves in the road? And it's because people were driving with studs in their tires. And then they said, well, it's because it gets icy here. And I'm like, I'm from Minnesota. Come on. come on, it's icy. Like,
hold my beer.
You guys just don't know how to drive, right? And then my first winter came. I was like, what on earth is this? Because it rains so much and it all freezes.
Right.
And at least at that time, like, we'd lose power all the time. All the lines are above ground. They'd freeze, whatever it was, right? And that was just a whole different thing for me. But Portland's amazing. The Northwest, I think, is just amazing, especially if you're an outdoors person. Oh my gosh. And when the spring comes, it is so beautiful because all that moisture keeps into everything green and just,
So how old are you at this point in time when Nike ends?
So I am 30, right around then. And so the whole notion was I'm gonna go back to Minnesota. I'm gonna be a consultant, and I'm gonna go back to school. And there was a school in Minnesota, MCAD, Minneapolis College of Art and Design.
Now, were you thinking, when you're talking about being a consultant, towards the hockey industry? I mean, what took you back to, obviously Minnesota's home, but how are you correlating being a sports consultant and being in Minnesota?
Yeah, so there's a ton of sports companies, actually, and fitness companies in Minnesota, believe it or not. So if you're an outdoorsman or you're a fitness industry person, there's a lot there, right? And so this is where I show my naivete, right? Is I went back thinking, no problem. And I went back and went, ooh, there's not a lot of work here. Like, I have a very specialized thing that I do, type of deal. And so, but I had networked a bit and I did get some jobs and that kind of thing. Started going back to school, and just kind of worked my way through it. Along the way, connected with a buddy of mine who had started an advertising agency in Minnesota. And he said, hey, you're creative, I'm starting this thing up. Why don't you come on board, right, as an account exec? And so I went and did that. And that was my transition from sporting goods to the advertising world. All of these things being marketing.
But still with a sports focus?
Well, we had some sports clients. Red Bull was one of them that we actually had. So I'm hedging as I say sports, because it was like, well, you really call Red Bull sports company, type of thing. But no, it was just an advertising agency. And when you're a startup advertising agency, and Minnesota's a huge advertising agency town.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know that. So there was work to be had, right? But you take what you can get, especially when you're starting out. So we would do all kinds of things, but we ended up doing a lot in the optical industry. Boat companies, just anything you can get entrepreneurially,
At this point in time, are you still thinking you want to stay in Minnesota? Or when does the bug or urge to go to California, or did work bring you here? Yeah,
so work brought me here, but it never left, that whole notion of that. But in fact, the smarter thing to do, really, instead of leaving Oregon to come to Minnesota, when we come from Oregon, just go down the coast and go to LA, again, naivete, looking back, I should have done that. But anyway, so did that, worked in the ad agency world for years, and just got burned out on it. The problem with being an entrepreneur, let alone in the advertising world, is that you're 24/7, right? Agency calls, or not the agency, but the client calls you. You got to pick up the phone, right? Type of deal, especially when you don't have big dollar clients, right? You're like, yep, whatever you need, I'm on it. I got it, that kind of thing. And I just got burned out and found a place that was a sporting goods company that was right near my house. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to dial it back for a little bit. And that company, after about 2 years, we were acquired by a French company, and that allowed me to actually transition to California, because I was running sales and marketing for this company. It was an airsoft company, actually.
Okay.
Airsoft, paintball, a bunch of that stuff. And so I transitioned to California to do sales and marketing out here.
Were they based in California, or was
No, they were in Minnesota. They were based in Minnesota, bought by this French company, but California was just blowing up for the airsoft industry, and so there was a lot of clients out there. And so my pitch was, because I wanted to move to California, right, was, hey, we should have a base operations out there. You know, we just got acquired. You know, you've got your own people that are going to come into this office. You got your own way to do that. I'm going to go out there and do, you know, sales and marketing, you know, on the West Coast, you know, type of thing. And so they were open to that. And so I came out here.
And what year is this?
2007.
And have you gone to college at this point?
Yeah, so I went to college at MCAD, and they had a program called visualization. Now the challenge with that was that it's an art school, and so it was a BS at an art school in a program called visualization. So private college, that's great. So what I found is that it didn't have a lot of weight, you know, outside. Right, because people didn't know what it was. It didn't connect any dots. And I kind of thought, again, this is being naive when I was doing it, that I just kind of thought, hey, if I just, you know, I want to go to art school, I'm creative, you know, that kind of thing, you know, whatever. And so actually even now, so I'm going back, I'm pursuing my master's with Pepperdine at their business school. So that dream of going to like a UCLA or USC, as I said before, things take their own path. Right. So now I'm not going to UCLA or USC. I'm going to Pepperdine in Southern California.
We'll get to the connection, but I'm sure it's something related to volleyball.
What?
The connection to Pepperdine is because isn't Pepperdine a volleyball school?
They are, but that's not why.
Oh, okay.
That's not why. They were great for military. They just have they love their vets, and they have a great program for it. And that's how I ended up there.
In hindsight, what degree would you recommend somebody getting if they're interested in marketing at the undergrad level?
I think that anything that has and all the schools seem to have their own little thing. Like it's not just a marketing degree. Like there's something other, even mass comm sometimes. I think that if you have something that has a digital end to it, like anything that has a tech degree component to it, a tech emphasis, you will be served well. Because everybody, we want you, when you come in to do marketing now, we want you to be doing analysis. We want you to be telling us what are the numbers saying, where should we be going, how do we tweak this, how do we hack this, how do we, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So they want people that think like that. So being creative is great. If you want to go to art school and get a graphic design degree because you want to be a graphic designer, that's different. But if you want to do marketing specifically, you know, eventually be in a leadership position, right? You should probably get something that has a tech emphasis to it, regardless of what the degree is.
Okay.
I do think that mass comm is probably a pretty good example.
Catch-all.
Yeah.
So airsoft for how many years?
So that was probably 5-ish years in total of doing that. And then as things happen, when you get purchased by another company, right? So there's always this, anybody that hasn't gone through an acquisition before, right? So when the company comes in and acquires you, they usually say something like, oh, nothing's going to change. It's going to be great. We're going to give you so much more support. And, you know, we're got this infusion of capital and that kind of thing, right? And then they come in and it's like that for a little bit, and then you're whatever. And then you start to see little cracks, you see the whatever. And then they've got, oh, you've got somebody that does also what I do, or, you know, something to that extent, right? And then it's like, oh, well, you know, we really need to streamline and that kind of thing, right? So I was this guy that had managed to negotiate my way out to California, right? And that became so we've got this guy out there that we pay pretty well. You know, can't we do that from the phones out here in Minnesota instead of having somebody that we're paying, you know, that, and we'll have, you know, other people do here? Because the company had mostly telesales people anyway. So I was, I think, the only guy actually doing it, you know, on the ground type of thing.
But you were able to make it work for a few years.
Absolutely. Yeah. And And part of that too was I recognized that we should be doing product placement in movies, because I would say maybe 80% of the prop weapons that you see on TV, film, whatever, is an airsoft gun. There's a lot of them. It's not real steel. It's because it's 1-to-1, scale.
Right.
It just works, and you can mock it up and weather it and beat the heck out of it, and they're cheap. And if somebody drops it, nobody's freaking out about it, and it can't shoot anything, or a BB essentially, right? So that kind of thing. So I started actually selling prop weapons.
How do they mimic though the muzzle flash?
Right. So that's all done in post.
Oh, okay. So it's all CGI and.
Yep. One of the things that I actually played with is I actually did I had rigged up a strobe that when you pulled the trigger, it would flash, just to give a sequence that somebody would actually get this feeling, have a cue and that kind of thing. But that was just a little.
Still in the old duck hunt days.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, you remember that? The little light. That was great. So yeah, I did that. And so what actually happened in my transition out of, so they said, hey, we're going to wind down what you're doing in California. We're going to do it from back here in Minnesota. And I said, okay, great. I'm going to keep selling prop weapons. Will you give me basically a unlimited license to sell these things without me having to inventory anything, to Hollywood, essentially, right?
So you were basically looking to transition yourself into a middleman distributor where you weren't actually holding any of the product, but you were selling the product for them.
Yep.
Again, going your own business route.
Yeah. That's this common theme that keeps coming back. Good, bad,
you don't
otherwise.
like working for anybody.
I mean, it's just got to be the right team, type of thing. Anyway, so I started doing that, and it wasn't terribly lucrative, but it was a lot of fun. So like the G.I. Joe movie, the first one of those, I supplied the prop weapons for those, some of the hero stuff. It was a good time.
Was that your foray then into the acting world?
Yeah. So I had moved out to California. That gave me an opportunity to kind of go, oh, maybe I should get headshots. Maybe I should get listed at Central Casting, which is the world's biggest casting agency for extras, right? And some of the top, actually a ton of the top talent that you see today, even like a Brad Pitt type of thing, started at Central Casting. So, so I started doing that, and I didn't mention it, but when I was in Minnesota, I had also been doing modeling and acting in Minnesota. And it kind of sounds silly, but it's such a small market in Minnesota. Target's there, Best Buy's there, Family Handyman Magazine. There's a number of other organizations that are there, right? That if you were decent, they would hire you again and again and again. And so I actually did pretty well doing that as kind of my side hustle that at times was paying more than my regular gig. And so I had a portfolio that I then brought to California. So it wasn't like I did the California dream of I'm going to go out there with I'm
going to be a star,
hope and a prayer and be a star, right? I had already had some self-confidence that I could do this. I was comfortable in front of a camera. I kind of knew the terminology and that kind of thing.
Were you doing all print work in Minnesota or actual live acting?
Both, yeah. I actually went, my goal was I wanted to be an actor. And I remember going into the agency and, they were like, well, do you want to model too? And I said, well, that's not real acting. That's just like standing there and posing in front of the camera, right? And then I realized that, whoa, wait a minute. So I don't have any lines to memorize. I show up, they give me everything. I'm here for how long? And I get paid this, and then I get paid again if they need to, re-up it. And like, okay.
Can we revisit this?
Yeah. So I ended up doing actually far more modeling than I did acting. There was just more volume of work as well. So anyway, when it came out, I was able to, kind of use that resume to help me along.
What was your first known acting role once you were back out here in California?
Okay, so here's the little secret thing in acting. Like the I would say the majority of people are just doing commercial work. They're doing stuff that you would never see, even industrial work, which is the
safety videos.
Exactly. Like, hello, when you're doing this, right? Don't surf porn when you're at work. You will get in trouble. That kind of thing.
Hey, at the end of the day, if it's paying the bills.
Yeah. So that's how you pay the bills. That's how you make money. That's what really brings it in. And then everybody hopes that somebody's going to discover you somewhere along the way, and that rarely happens, type of thing. So probably the thing that I'm known most for and is when I was on NCIS, and I actually was a dead guy. Okay. So, but the thing is that, so when you do extra work, there's kind of like some featured extra stuff where you're not, you're not just walking around doing crosses and whatever in the background. They're hiring you because they need you to be like a kind of a hero role type of thing. They need a specific thing. And NCIS, it's up near Magic Mountain, so up near Six Flags, right? That way. And in their own studio. And they brought me up, and it was the weirdest audition ever. So it was the director and the executive producer, so the two, big head honchos at NCIS, had me come into the office, and I'm sitting there with a bunch of guys that look just like me. And that's the thing about when you go in acting gigs, right? You go in as like, they're
looking for a particular look.
I was like, I'm the white guy spiky hair club. Like that was every time I go, like, hey, my twins are here. So I went in there with a bunch of guys that looked like ex-military guys, and we all had some gray hair, that kind of thing. And they had me sit in this office chair, and they said, we want you to play dead. We want you to just play dead for us. And they were holding this iPad above my head, like unbelievably close. Like, just close your eyes, and taking pictures of me. And it was just so surreal. And then I go back in there, and something else that happened that never, or rarely, it's never happened for me. It's the only time it's ever happened for me, is they came back out and they said, you guys can leave. Fred, we need you to stick around. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Play dead round 2.
Well, at that point they had hired me, like just from that, right?
Oh, okay.
And so, there wasn't a callback or anything. It was just right into it, and that one involved prosthetics. So I had to go and get forms made on me. And
now, did this original invite simply come from the fact that you had your face shot and your bio on
at Central
Casting?
I think that one did, actually. Yeah. So I had an agent as well for commercial work, but this one came through Central, and it's not necessarily that it paid more than the other ones, but it's the one that to this day, it's the most watched show in the world, or at least it was at the time. It might still be. It's ridiculous how many people watch that every episode and love that show.
So basically, if you've got an interest in acting, get your face shot or your head shot, get your bio, and get into Central Casting, and just maybe you might get that call one day.
Yeah. So my advice, if you want to get into acting, is no matter where you are, doesn't have to be, my point on the Minnesota thing is it doesn't have to be LA. Like, you don't need to think that you need to pack up, move your stuff out, and come out here, because it's expensive out here. You're going to be a dime a dozen. There's a million people that are special just like you.
You're bursting everybody's bubble right now.
I am. I'm just being real for a second here, right? One of the things that I learned right away, they told me, I don't remember who said it to me, but they said, know your type, right? So people think as actors that it means that I have this incredible range. Like, oh, you need me to be a whatever? I can do that. Oh, I can do that. No. They're going to look at you and go, oh, you're a middle-aged white guy. We're going to put you as the young dad. We're going to put you as the, whatever. You're going to play your type. And it takes years and years and years if you ever break out of it. Think about some of the best actors that we know, or the most known actors. They probably play the same roles over and over, the same types over and over again.
Well, imagine no matter how good of an actor you are in the sense of saying your lines, getting into a scene, you can't change your physical appearance.
Right.
They can through, like I said, prosthetics and stuff, but you come to the table with a set parameter of what you can be.
Yeah. Even your mannerisms, the way you present, right, is kind of locked down. It's very hard for you to change that. I know that's supposed to be acting. Well, you're supposed to be able to go in and be whatever, right? But if they look at you and they go, this guy looks like he's funny, right? they're probably not going to cast you
for serious
stuff. It's just how it goes, right? So as soon as you can get comfortable with that and you can own your type, then you can go deep on that, lean into it instead of saying, hey, I'm going to not do, other things.
Now, how has your military career benefited your ability to find work?
Right. So interestingly enough, the first job that I had outside of Rollerblade, okay, because that one was I showed up, did a stunt, whatever. The gentleman that hired me, so in between Rollerblade and Nike was another company, an Italian company that made the boots for Rollerblade, right? The point is, he said to me, your military service is worth a degree to me, right? You committed, you showed that you can do it, you got discipline, blah, 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 right? That's what he cared about. And that was amazing. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. Everybody's going to think that way. And then I was like, oh, no, they don't. You're great. You have these skills, but you're missing something.
Some people see not necessarily what you did in the military, but the fact of the commitment, the structure, the regimen will eventually pay off for them.
Right. So the military has helped me in that it gave me a foundational structure for everything that I've done. And I lean on that at times when I'm working, especially with groups. It gives you a certain, I think, or at least for me, it gave me a certain level of confidence. And I was always, I would argue, fairly confident, but I mean, it just gave me a certain, I hate saying gravitas, but like, I could walk into a room and I could, be that leader when I needed to be, or I could back off if I needed to be. And those kind of things that I learned from going into the military, having to be one of the low level people, and then having to, lead a small group of people and that kind of thing. So
going back to the playing dead part.
Yeah.
So in acting, as far as getting paid, so there's extras who are literally just in the background.
Yeah.
Those aren't paid positions for the most part, correct?
Yeah, they are. They are.
So what's the level? Like, because how do you get in what's the pecking order, so to speak? Is it just standing in the background you're going to get paid, or is there any of them that you don't get paid at all? Okay.
So it's different depending if you're union or not. Because but even with your union, we're talking about a few $100s, right? And you're working a whole day and you are sitting around most of the time, and then they call you and they say, hey, go do, this. I think I did that once, and then I was like, oh, unless it's a featured thing, I don't want to do it, because you totally blew 12 hours of my day
for hardly any money.
Like, it just doesn't make any, and plus I had to drive there, and especially in LA, right? And it's like, okay. And traffic and the LA. Call times are ridiculous at ridiculous times, right? It's like, okay, so you want me where at 5 a.m, type of thing, and you get to base camp and you got to find your way around, and it's just so ridiculous. But kind of to our earlier point of saying, how do you, if somebody's listening to this and they want to get into acting, or they've got that bug and they want to do it, I'm going to say there are opportunities for you to build your portfolio. That's the biggest thing that you can do in your local market. There is stuff that you can do, and if there's not, you make your own stuff. I mean, we're in a creator world now where you can go and make YouTube videos, make whatever you want to do. Just lean into that thing that you want and go for it, because you don't have to necessarily wait for somebody else to come along and do it. And if you show that you're passionate enough in it, right, that will be contagious. People will pick that up.
So what does playing dead pay you?
So I think I made, I don't know, $3,000-4,000.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't like huge money, right? It's not one of these like the beer commercials that it's like, oh, you got paid like $100,000 and they, renew you and all that stuff. Yeah. So it was.
And the filming time, was it just all done in one day, or did you have to go back multiple days?
No, it was multiple days. So I think there were 3, but it was just, I think it was like 3 days in total on that.
Were you a cadaver, or were you in a scene of like somebody who had been blown up or shot?
Yeah, it was really cool because I got to do multiple things. And and this is one where people call them, like it still happens. I'm on oh no, that was Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So I've had people call up. They're like, I just saw you on TV. You know, it's kind of cool, right? And they all think that you make all kinds of, you know, crazy money, but you know, it's a lot of fun. You've got to enjoy the work and enjoy the process to be willing to do it. But for that one, so I had to go to a prosthetics company where they actually do a mold of you and they build all the, so in that case, I did have to do a cadaver bit. There were multiple things that I had to do. So that was one of them where I was on the table, which is a very cold, those stainless steel morgue tables. Yeah. So, you know, they made this, it's made out of gelatin and it's got the stitches already in it as if I'd been cut open, and that kind of thing. I remember bringing home a piece of that and I keeping it in the fridge because it's gelatin. And my wife's like, why do we have this? It's disgusting in there. It's like, it's cool.
Those are memories.
All right, fine, it's in the trash. But yeah, so I did that. And then I might've gone back a second. No. I think I did 2 days at NCIS at the shoot. Oh, I know what it was. It was one day at the shoot location up there, and then it was one day at their studio because we had to do the morgue scene. So that was in their studio. I had to get military headshots done, right? For my ID, because you know in NCIS they show the like, oh, you know, Lieutenant Commander Dobby, you know, he's here he is, and they put up the big pictures and all that stuff, right? So so they did that, and then on scene, my fun part was that I actually sang "Happy Birthday" to Mark Harmon from the trunk of a car as a dead guy. So
explain that scene.
So this whole episode, I think it was season 13. That it was. I'll have to get you what that was specifically. Season 13, episode 8. I'm not sure. Anyway, so somebody rear ends another car. The trunk pops open. The girl's all angry. The driver that she rear ended takes off, and then the trunk pops open. And here's a dead guy in the trunk. It's me, right? Turns out that my character had been smuggling the Botox essentially in my body for some reason, in these little vials, and I was dead and I'm in the trunk. And so when we shot that, so they had the camera over my head looking down into the trunk, and we're doing that, and Mark Harmon's there, you know, talking. By the way, he's an amazing guy, loves the military. He's such a genuine dude. He's amazing. But so the assistant director says, "Hey everybody, can we stop for a second? It's Mr. Harmon's birthday. Let's all sing happy birthday." And I'm like, okay, let's do this, right? And so everybody's all singing happy birthday, and I'm, you know, a dead guy wrapped up in a.
Have you had any speaking parts in any movies or TV shows?
So that has all been industrial work type of stuff. So it's really not. I'm trying to think of stuff that people would have seen. Because I had something on the Thundermans. I was in like every season of the Thundermans, which is a kids show. It was on Nickelodeon for like 4 or 5 years. Yeah, it's.
Is it something where the opportunity just hasn't presented itself, or you really haven't pushed to make it more of a full-time?
Yeah, I think the problem was I was always trying to make some real money, right, along the way. And so I'm telling you, like, if you want to act, you've got to love it so much that you just are willing to live off of scraps and, you know, live with 3 people in a room and not do anything. And maybe someday, hopefully, you're going to make it, or make it being that you can do this for a living.
Right.
That's why you hear all these people that when they give interviews and they talk about, it's like, I am just so blessed that I can do this for a living. Right? You hear people say that. That's why, because the vast majority can't.
It's such a small minority of people who actually make it.
Yeah, and a lot of the people that started out thinking they were going to be an actor, right? The person in front of the camera, end up behind the camera in some way. So, you know, they go into production in some way, or they're part of the crew, or, you know, whatever it is.
Now, you've done voiceovers?
Yep.
Just for commercials, or?
So, yeah, it was, I did some, what was it? Creepy Freaks or something. It was some cartoon a while back. But I haven't really pursued that a lot. It's just something that I have done along the way. I did a bunch of, again, some industrial stuff. When you go through ad agency world and all that kind of stuff, you do that.
Is it the same kind of thing though, in the sense of you've got a particular voice sound?
For sure.
You put your voice in somebody's Rolodex and then they call you?
For sure. Yeah. When they're casting for voiceover, right, they're listening to it and they know right away. I mean, it's not like they have to listen to a lot of your demo before they decide on it, type of thing. So
Airsoft, you went into your own business selling them. What was your next business venture after that?
Yeah. So, what I realized along the way on selling prop weapons, right, was that it's like, I have this kind of term. It's like, it's not Ferrari money, right? Like, in other words, great, you have a business, but don't confuse that with like, I can go buy a Ferrari. Like, this is not going to turn into that. This is like, I have a business, I'm making some money.
So you knew it was not something that was going to last.
Right. So, I actually, I think this one was just a total blind, application I did, but I had gotten hired by the company that owns the brand Spinning. So the indoor cycling, the guys that actually started the whole thing, and they're in Venice Beach, and I went on as their director of marketing, and that was amazing.
Again, a position that came to you because you were looking for it, or opportunity came your way?
I looked because I was reading the tea leaves and going, okay, I can't sustain this. It's been fun. I thought it could turn into something, but I'm like, okay, this is not going to work out the way that I thought it was. So I talk about these like multiple times of like, oh, that didn't work out, right? But you pivot, and that's one of the things I think the military does teach you as well, is that stuff's going to get thrown at you that you didn't expect. How well can you adjust, recover, make the best of the situation, type of thing.
And always anticipating or trying to anticipate the future. You got to kind of read the current and go, where's this going to end up?
Well, and I would say even more so, giving yourself the options, right? So that you go, okay, I think this is going to go here, but if it doesn't, I'm going to pivot to this or this, whatever that is. And so I started looking for a real job, something that would pay, like actually a paycheck. Oh, this would be amazing. I haven't done that in a while. And so, yeah, I got hired by,
Spinning.
By Spinning. Well, the company's called Mad Dog Athletics, in Venice, California.
Have you always kind of positioned yourself towards the fitness industry?
Okay. So I'm glad you asked this, because I feel like this is along those lines of what I said about the know your type, right? So, I'm athletic, I'm fit, I'm, those kind of things. And so it just, I think I naturally just kind of fit the role, right? So when you walk into let me get totally not PC for a second. So let's say that you are, you've got a scraggly beard, you're overweight, you sloppily dressed, whatever, and you go and you apply for a job at a fitness company and they bring you in. Okay, they're probably not going to tell you that's why you didn't get hired, but it probably was a big reason why you didn't, right? So if you look that role, you already have a certain leg up on it. And then on top of that, if you are, you have a pedigree that is, he's been an athlete, high level, it was just kind of this progression of what I did. I just pivoted from sports into fitness type of thing.
So it's knowing what market you fit into, because ultimately you have to know yourself. You could sit there and say, hey, I want to be in the fitness industry, but if you're not fit, it doesn't equal to the image they're trying to portray.
Yeah, that same thing that I'd said before on, if you want to get into an industry, you want to get into something, you got to go deep into it. You got to really, it wasn't like I said, this selling prop weapons thing isn't going to work out. Why don't I go do, something that's completely that I've never done, that whatever, I just kind of said, oh, well, this fitness thing, it's right adjacent to what I do. Great. That seems like it makes sense. Right. So
to not oversimplify it almost kind of seems like stay in your lane and just find the next exit that works for you.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. So
we've talked about this previously before we started recording. So when did the cannabis industry come?
So there's this, if you were going to Venn diagram everything that's in like health and wellness, right? And I kind of don't like the term wellness because it gets super homeopathic and into some weird areas for some people. But if you take sports, fitness, even healthcare, so you go medical, those kind of things, wellness, so things like chiropractic and things like, all those type of things, they kind of all overlap in a way. So like I said, if you did a Venn diagram and you like overlap, in the center there is kind of where I operate, right? So I'm able to pull in all those different things. So a buddy of mine had invested in this company, and this is right before we went legal in the state of California, right? And this company needed a marketing person, and they didn't have anybody, and it was just the right time for that. And I went and talked to him, and the funny thing is, I'd never smoked weed. I had that kind of thing, but I understood the point of what we were trying to do, what we're trying to position, that we needed to play in a space. And the reason actually that they really liked me was because I knew how to operate in the other wellness areas, right? And so I could take that knowledge and bring it into cannabis. And that's what you saw. You even see this today. I mean, it's not like it's been that long, but that people are trying to take this thing that was, out of people's secret rooms in their, house and go, hey, we can be adult about this, and we can have good branding, and we can, actually deliver, real consumer packaged goods type delivery of a product. Right. So that's what I did. And I came on board, and we actually did, it was a lot of fundraising we did.
You talk about the wellness aspect. So obviously it depends on how deep you want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's hard to ignore the fact that if you see enough studies, there is a wellness benefit to the CBD. It's just, it's going to take time for society to not correlate, oh, it's marijuana. There are the health benefits, not that I'm using it, but from what I've read, to CBD, whether it be emotional health, mental health, physical health. I've read multiple stories about people who use it just for joint pain.
Yep. Anti-inflammatory. Yeah. So the unfortunate part is that it's CBD is kind of seeing its day now. Right. But initially it wasn't that long ago that people just kind of lumped that in with cannabis too. Right. It's THC, CBD, we're all the same, like whatever, I don't know what to call it. It's all weed, right? Type of thing. And so because we haven't, because the Schedule I drug, right, you very few people can do research on it. Very few. And so all you have is decades of anecdotal little, like, well, my grandma said it cured her glaucoma, right? And so some people push that a little far, and you start making claims. That's where you get into the dangerous territory, right? But it's one of these, unfortunately, still in that realm of, well, it worked for me, it might work for you. Here's what I do. Why don't you try it and let me know, what you think. But there's absolutely some good stuff going on in CBD and THC, and the combination of those two, because oftentimes they work better together. Even if it's in small amounts, depending on the ratio. But that's the whole thing, is that like nobody really has that dialed in a prescriptive type of way, and different people react differently to it. So it will take somebody taking it off the Schedule I list and making it so that this is acceptable, to do research, or accessible to do research on. before we really unlock the benefits of CBD and cannabis.
Because looking at it from the bigger picture, if there is a true health benefit to it, the angle or the aspect that I'm thinking about is you've got active military and active law enforcement, that the gamble of possibly testing negative or testing positive for THC isn't worth it, but it would be nice if it gets to a point where, hey, CBD does have health benefits, that it's something that we can get to a point where maybe it can be used on a broader scope. But I do believe it's down the road.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's such a hot button thing, the political side of it on, if you're going to put a stake in the ground and kind of say, hey, I'm going to legalize it federally, there's a chance you're not going to get reelected. So.
Well, and you have to make the correlation. I mean, neither one of us, or probably most of my listeners, weren't around during Prohibition, but when they made alcohol legal again, there was probably still a huge stigma to bathtub gin that had to take, for nothing else, time to get that out of people's minds. It's the same way probably today. Yes, marijuana is growing in its legality, but it still has that negative connotation that hasn't gone away yet.
For sure. It's going to take another generation or so. I mean, the whole reefer madness thing, that really started the whole, it's really ridiculous if you look at the history of how cannabis became this thing that people used, and then it became vilified, and then the war on drugs and all this, right? That marijuana was, ground zero for the war on drugs type of thing. It's ridiculous. And to this day, we still have those, sorry boomers, but, that era, right? The Reagan era group, et cetera, and even the Gen Xers. And it's going to take a while for somebody to come into a, legislative authority that has enough peer groups that feel the same way and their constituency feels the same way, that they'll feel comfortable enough saying, hey, we should really deregulate this, or, make it so that it's accessible for research.
Right.
I don't even care about the legality side of it, because the states are taking their own stance on that, right? But make it federally legal, because that will allow for schools and organizations that have federal funding to not jeopardize or lose their funding if they want to go and do research on it.
Right. So you've made a bunch of stops.
Yeah.
In your life.
Yeah.
You've moved all over the country.
Yeah.
Fortunately, your wife was willing to move with you.
Yeah. Well, I did get divorced along the way.
Oh, okay.
But she was a trooper, and I'm remarried now. So yeah.
Coming to today, you now own your own company.
Yep.
Your own marketing company.
Yep.
So you finally made it happen.
Yeah.
You finally made your own company successful. How'd that happen?
So I stopped kind of thinking about these little side things, and I just thought, well, what is it that I do as a whole, right? So I'm a sports and fitness guy. I have all this experience. If I look at all the companies that I've worked with or for, right, it's a pretty good list of top, fitness and sports companies. So I'm betting that other companies would like to, have access to that kind of knowledge base. And so a buddy of mine who is a top salesperson in the fitness industry, we got together and I said, I'll do the marketing, you do the sales, and we'll have a go at this. And we went and we're pitching it at the first trade show and going around to these kind of startup level, organizations and saying, hey, you're trying to get into the US, or you're trying to launch this product. What are you doing for marketing? And I'd look at their stuff and they needed help. And so it just seemed to take off pretty organically from that, especially international companies, because they don't know the marketing in the U.S., right? Even if they've been really successful in Europe or Asia, the U.S. is just a different animal. We treat fitness so differently than like in Europe, for example.
Right. So how many years are you into it now?
I think it was 2014 that I went into that and started doing that full time.
And how big is your company today?
So, well, what's interesting is we do distributed distributed workforce, if you will. So what's great is that we can cherry pick from the best in the business for different projects that we have. So when clients come in and they want to work on, or they need help with a certain project, right? I can go out. I don't have to have full-time staff to do this. It's the way companies can operate now, right? As long as you're under, I think, a certain level, right? So if you're, operating in kind of like a 5 million annual revenue and lower, something like that, you can probably get away with doing it at a group where you're just like, oh, I'm going to hire you, and I'm going to hire you. And you have this group of people that that you trust, that are essentially consultants, right? Or run their own businesses. And you just work that network, right? Because even if you don't know what those people are, you don't know what it is that you want to do specifically on a project, you can go to one of your network connections and they'll have somebody they've worked with to get that kind of project done. So without having to have a staff in-house, right, you can operate like a large agency, but have low overhead.
But are you still having to, and this may sound like a rhetorical question, you still have to get out and hustle your clients, though, and track them down. What's that process like?
Well, COVID sucked.
Newsflash, it's still...
it still sucks. Trade shows were really great. I say were. Trade shows were great. Because that's where it was like a, fishbowl, right? It's just, everybody was in there. The whole reason why we're not doing it because of COVID, right? Everybody was there and everybody's trying to show their wares and get exposure in that. And so we're able to go in and just walk a show and be able to pick up clients, or at least very strong leads from, a couple of days at a trade show. And in the fitness industry, it's not that big. There's like one major show in the US a year. So you can go to that show and you can, do the rounds and that kind of thing. And start some pretty good relationships.
This may be a very stupid question. If somebody's thinking about getting into the marketing game, the marketing business, what is marketing?
Well, it's funny because that's as soon as you start in the marketing game, and I was like, oh boy, because it's just so nebulous, right? So you have to carve out your own specialty within marketing. So I don't think you can just say I'm a marketing guy, right? Because there's so many little subspecialties in there. Like, people will think, like, if you say I'm in marketing, right? Some people must say, oh, social media. Oh, you do ads. Oh, you do, creative work. Oh, you do. There's like so many aspects of it that the industry is maybe more important than calling yourself a marketer. In fact, maybe even saying a marketer is not great because it's just too broad a brush to paint yourself with.
So if somebody wanted to come into this business, what would be some of your recommendations?
Yeah. So first thing is pick your industry. Pick your industry because it's if you're getting into marketing, it's probably because you have some creative bent, right? You want to do something.
Would you say it's a requirement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And don't confuse marketing with graphic design. Like, I've met a lot of people that they're creative. They work because marketing basically merges or is the conduit between the creatives, like the designers and the people that are, really do that really at the best level, and the suits, right? So somebody's got to be able to translate the requirements of the business to the creatives, right? And somebody's got to talk to the consumer in some way, because the suits aren't real good at talking to the consumer, right? And the creatives will make stuff that's oftentimes like way too creative and just misses the message, but it was cool, type of thing. So marketing is that middleman, if you will, that person in between that translates those two into a language that the consumer can actually understand and is responsive to, right? Not just that I made something, but that it's like, oh, I'm doing this because I specifically need you to do something in response to this. Right. And it's no longer in a world where we can just say, So push marketing, where it used to be like you would just get ads for, okay, we're guys, right? You get a tampon ad that would show up while you're watching a TV show, and it's like, okay, that doesn't make any sense to me, right? So now we live in a world where you don't have to do that anymore, right? I can get hyper-targeted advertising, marketing, whatever you want to call it, that's specifically relevant to me. And I know we all hate the, selling of my data and all that kind of stuff. But I would argue that at least you're getting the stuff that you're using for free. You are paying for it through the advertising that you are allowing to come in, right? So at least the advertising that you're getting is probably somewhat relevant to something you searched for, did, whatever, which I would argue is better than getting something that's just like, why am I seeing this? Let me just hit the mute button. What is this? We
could peel back that. We're not going to, but that whole thing of, I searched for this on my phone and all of a sudden my Instagram ads have it, and the whole, Big Brother watching.
You and I were just talking, and when we leave, I'll get an ad for something that's like, what?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, for sure. So the market, so get back to your main question. If somebody wanted to get in the marketing game, how do they do it? Right. So one, pick your industry. Like if you're in the military right now, and you're looking to transition, and before you get out, think about what your passion is, and then what industry is that, right? So pick that. If it dovetails off of what you did in your service time, then that's even better, because then you just get this extra little amplification. But it doesn't have to be. You need to start thinking about your transition years before you actually make it happen, right? So you start thinking about what industry you'd like to do. Marketing is all about, like I said, that translation of creative. You got to have the creative side of it though, but you got to have that OCD analytical side, right? Type of thing. And then just go run hard to that industry.
Is there something somebody could do now if they were active duty in anticipation of that transition without getting a quote unquote job?
Yes. If you are, okay. So if you want to get into, marketing per se, there are so many different ways that you can do it, right? You also have to pick kind of how you want to do it. And let me rephrase this. If you want to get into marketing and you are in the military, know what part of marketing you want to get into. So do you want to just do advertising because somebody told you that you can make tons of money doing advertising, right? Or is it doing the creative side, where you want to do photo shoots and you want to build brochures and you want to do, websites and that kind of thing? Like, know what aspect of it you really want to do. There's even the data analytics. I mean, that is part of marketing. It's, super geeky with the numbers side of things. UI and UX, so interfaces and experiences and type of thing. Events, there's so many different aspects of it that when you start out, when you get out, you'll probably be, some marketing associate, some, that level of thing.
So, is that a fancy name for a grunt?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But you'll be in the marketing, world, right? You
got to pay your dues no matter what.
Yeah. I think actually, so your question was, if you are thinking about getting into marketing and you're active military right now, how can you start doing it? Start by getting some certifications. So you can go online, you can get some Google certifications, that kind of thing, just to show that you have some skills in it. I think that one of the better jobs that you can start out with, actually, and it's a total grunt job, but is sampling and experiential marketing type of things, because they're always looking for somebody to go out there and press the flesh, if you will, and have a great experience, a branded experience with their products, right? And that tends to be a great transition point to then do more marketing type things.
And when you say sampling, you're talking about that person who's, hey, you want to try this?
Yeah. I mean, sampling has changed a bit over the years into what it is. It's more experiential now, where the branded experience of you going into an environment that is all about that particular product. There are agencies that do specifically that kind of stuff that you can find. The sub-disciplines within marketing are so broad that you've really got to just do some homework and figure out what part of it really gets you excited.
Regarding the certificates you mentioned, are they time and labor intensive in doing the studying and testing for them, or what's the process?
So not really. They're not even that expensive. Like the Facebook has certifications that are pretty cheap, like $100 for a certain. You can take them all the way up. You can get Google Ads certified. Some of them don't even charge, for these certifications along the way. So you can do those, but I'm saying only do those if that's what you want to do. Or take the course, take one of the free ones just to find out, is this like something that got you excited? Because if you're doing it just to make money, you're in trouble, like for real. And if my career path is any evidence to somebody, like marketing is a roller coaster. You are going to be riding high, getting paid well, loving it, box seats. It's great. And then all of a sudden it's like, oop, now I'm out of a job. I got to figure it out and go do something else. Right.
So constantly, it definitely sounds like something where you're constantly looking at tomorrow today.
Yeah.
You're not relying on today for tomorrow. It's almost kind of like, okay, what's going to be here tomorrow? It's needing to be that always forward thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And the solutions thing, all of the what marketing does, we're solving problems, right? So just as simple as I have a new product and I want to sell it, right? Well, who is your target market? If you tell me it's everybody, and this actually might be more, I'm betting that a lot of people that listen to this are going to be thinking, I want to start up my own business, right? So
that's what you wanted to do years ago.
It is. And that's just how I think. Know thy customer is number one. Don't ever say to me that everybody's going to want this. Everybody. Because it's not true. The running theme from everything that we've been talking about today is that you've got to go deep on whatever it is, whether it was my rollerblading or whatever. Like you needed to go like really hard down that path and go for every last bit of it until you realize that there's something, maybe you run into a roadblock or you need to pivot a little bit or whatever it is, but go deep on it.
So now that we've covered all that, I want to get into the topic that was really interesting to me personally. Okay. Battle dinner.
I love it. Okay.
So first off, where did the joy of cooking come from, or the interest in cooking? Oh my gosh.
Okay. So, my dad, as I said, is a mechanical engineer, right?
Which lends itself to cooking.
Well, it kind of does, and here's why. So I grew up making stuff, right? We were always making things. We used to joke when people come over to my house, like, did Dad show you the laser? Like, oh my gosh. Like, friends would come over, new friends, like, oh, come on, let's go look at the shop. So I was always building things. That was always kind of something I was doing. And then I moved to California, and I no longer had the first place I moved into. I leased a place, right? And I don't have a house to work on. Like I'm not responsible for this. That I don't have a yard. There's a gardener. Well, this is new. That kind of stuff, right? And so I needed that outlet. Like I don't know if it was like calming my OCD or whatever. But so my family was never the mom's the only cook. Sometimes dad cooks, sometimes mom cook, whatever. And so there wasn't a fear of cooking at all. But what I found is that just like when I work in the shop, there's lots of tools and there's specialty tools that do things. And if I have these specialty tools, I can make these things that people go, ooh, that's really cool. How'd you do that? Right. But I got to do it with food. There's specialty tools. There's all kinds of cool things you can make. There's whatever. And people get to eat it. Right. Which adds to the whole thing. Right. So there's this cathartic end of it too. Cause and everybody ate and it's wonderful type of thing.
So how did Battle Dinner come about?
Okay. So our friends, Bev and Dan, so high school friends of my wife, we had gotten together and just, hey, come on over, let's have dinner. And I'd cook, and then we'd go over to their house, they'd cook, and we'd end up watching a movie afterward, right? And so my wife and I came back from Germany, where we went to Oktoberfest. And on the way back, I was on the flight. I was watching the movie Chef.
Is that the one with Favreau?
Yes, right, where he's making Cubano sandwiches, right, and then the food truck and that kind of thing, right. And I'm like, we're gonna watch this for the next time that we get together, and I'm going to make cumanas. It'll be like this themed dinner thing, right? And so we did it, and it was like, this is amazing. And then it was like, okay, well then when you do it, you pick a movie, and you build the dinner around the movie, right? Type of thing. And it was so fun that we were like, oh, this feels like a battle because we're one-upping each other all the time. It's like, oh, let's call it battle dinner. And so we started taking pictures of it and that kind of thing. We've actually, ours is coming up, this next one next week. And I think it's number 76 that we've done. So 76 movie-themed dinners that we've done.
And if I'm understanding this correctly,
yeah,
it's not just something that you made a name up, battle dinner. It's you've actually created a somewhat business out of this, correct? Loosely?
It's really interesting because going back to the acting thing, right? We actually had a showrunner that was talking to us. It was right before COVID, and then it just changed everything, literally right before COVID. And it was like, oh, we're putting everything on hold right now to possibly turn it into a show, right? Which would have been like, I mean, you see all these cooking shows. Why not a movie-themed cooking show? That makes sense. And so, but how we do it at our house is we, or at the houses, and we've done it at more than just two people's houses. But so you pick a movie and you don't tell what we've evolved this to, right? Is that the guests don't know what the movie is, right? So every battle dinner, at the end of the dinner, we pull a name out of a hat. A genre out of a hat. So action, comedy, rom-com, whatever it is, right? We pull it out of a hat. It's an old Vietnam era helmet that we pull it out of. And so the genre going in. So, we've got action thriller for ours coming up, right? So then on the drive home, you're like, oh, what are we going to pick? And then you build food around the movie. It's not literally taking movie that you saw in the movie and saying, oh, there was a cannoli, I'm going to put a cannoli in it, oh, whatever. So we do things like if I told you that tequila, we always start with, it's 5 courses, so we always start with a drink, right? It's the beverage. If there was a tequila-based drink, you would probably think that location of that movie was south of the border, right? Or something like that, right? So
I was going to make some sarcastic remark, but yes.
Well, it could be, right? So it's
Russia.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. I'm going to invite you over to the next battle dinner. So we actually have a funny side note on that. We had some people over that weren't really movie people, but they thought it sounded fun what we were doing. And they had not seen a movie in like 20 years. And I was like, you guys, you can't play this. So it was, so it's basically charades. We want the guests to guess the movie, right? But we don't actually say what it is. We let them go through the 20 questions type of asking as each course comes out. And of course the menu kind of explains, when you see the menu descriptions, it's like, oh, okay, that's what that is, type of thing. So.
But you've actually got an Instagram page behind it.
Yeah. So it's battle dinner. Yeah.
It is something that people could follow and reach out to you if they're interested.
Yeah. So every we do more we found the stories are actually more fun than doing the regular posts, right? Because it's like we do these once a month. And so they're very special events. And so if you go on battle dinner and you look at the stories and you look at in our feed, if you look at the on our profile, the little highlights on there, you'll see the past ones that we've done. And so you just follow along that story. And if you wanted, you can actually start guessing what that is. We have people actually guessing what the movie is and sending us messages along the way. It's, oh, I think it's this. Oh, I think it's this, which adds a whole nother layer to cooking. I mean, I give huge props to these people that all they do is do curated Instagram, food shoot. There's so much work.
Well, I saw you in one of your pictures. You were setting up for either a photo or a live video shoot, and you were doing the camera or the lighting.
Yeah. We actually hired somebody to come in and basically shadow me the whole time while we're doing this whole process. And then, sometimes, we've put I think Instagram, at least, I don't know if it's still that, but it had like 100 that you could do max before it started like in your story for the day before it started deleting the other ones, type of thing. So we maxed out on that. But it's a ton of fun. Even if you don't know the movie, everybody guesses it by the time the, entree is done. So we go cocktail, appetizer, main and side, and then a dessert type of thing.
To me, it sounded really interesting. It sounded fun.
It's a blast. One of my favorites to this day was, do you know the movie The Shape of Water?
No.
Okay. That's maybe a bad example then. But it won a ton of awards.
The meal plan seems easy. It's a glass of water.
There you go. Water. I hadn't thought of that. That would have been so simple. It's so simple. So, actually, I'm gonna kind of give you some insight into what we're doing for this one. Because it's coming up this week, and I'm betting.
Yeah, you're not going to give anything away.
All right, so here we go. So, Liam Neeson is in a movie called Nonstop.
Okay.
Which is he's a U.S. Marshal that is flying on a international flight, and he gets blackmailed along the way, right? So,
I think this sounds vaguely familiar.
It should be. I mean, it was a wide release, whatever movie. But we try not to go too obscure.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, I have never heard of that movie. Like, how am I supposed to know that French foreign film, type of thing. So what we're doing is we're actually, we're going to serve the cocktail. It's going to be margaritas, but you're going to get it like you would on your flight. Where you get
the little bottle.
Bingo. Bingo. So that's the first thing coming up. Right. So that sets the mood of like, okay, so hold on. Why are we getting these in these little, and we've even got the little cups that are like those little, the when you're on a flight,
right. the little plastic airline
cup. All have that same shape, right? Type of thing. So we've got that. And then we're going to serve the meal we actually got trays, like airline trays, and serve them in little like peel off.
Oh, okay.
Foil like type of thing with each of the things. We've got Irish potatoes for Neeson, right, and that kind of thing. And so that's how it's going to play out. So it's more than just the food, right? It's the presentation. It's the naming of the different things that you have in the menu.
It sounds like it just goes back to the same thing we've been talking about this entire time. It's feeding the creativity of it. It's not just simply, hey, here's dinner, guys. It's putting the underlying story of the dinner to it.
Absolutely.
But when I came across it, I thought it was just kicking the pants.
Yeah, and what's been fun is that everybody. When I say everybody, I mean really like everybody that we talk about this with. They're like, that sounds really cool. Like, can I come to one of these? Type of deal. And they're a blast. And, COVID aside, the whole notion of dinner parties and getting together with people, I think it's universally kind of a plus. Like, I enjoy doing it. It's really cool to even say that you're having a dinner. Like, there's something about having friends over and taking care of them and doing whatever. But there's also this fear of like, well, what am I going to do? Oh my gosh, I have to do this food. I have to do this, whatever type of thing. And when you do a theme like that, it takes some of that pressure off. It puts a different type of pressure on, but it takes the pressure off of like, so I'm just going to cook food and we're going to come over and we're just going to hang out. It gives you something to do.
And I could see over time that without something pushing to get you out of your box, oh wait, we're having chicken again at Bob's house, you know? And so it's something that keeps the creative juices flowing, so to speak. Yeah.
And if you like to cook, another cool thing about it is that you'll find that when you competitively cook, right, as I air quote that, competitively cook, when you're having somebody else that you go, hey, I'm going to try to one up what you did, or I'm going to show you I've got skills that you're going to be, like, oh, I can't believe, how did you do that? Type of thing. So you start pushing your own like experience, trying different techniques and just going for it. At least I do, type of thing. But both of us that have primarily done this, and Bev's the primary cook with Bev and Dan, and I'm the primary cook with Laura and I. You just force yourself into kind of being uncomfortable. That whole like be uncomfortable with or being comfortable with being uncomfortable, like that kind of thing. And it's a blast. Like I learned how to use a sous vide machine. Like if you've ever heard, what sous vide is, right?
Mm-hmm. Did you go out and buy one?
Yeah, well, actually, my oldest son had one, and so I borrowed that. But then I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!" So I bought all these accessories, for it, type of thing.
Cooking is a rabbit hole that it can be an expensive rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of people and they don't realize the specialty. You think about a knife. No, you walk into a cutlery store, a cooking store, a cutlery store. There's a million different knives, and then you go into different brands, or a pan is this pan.
Yeah.
You could spend quite a long time going down that rabbit hole without ever being professional.
Yeah, and if you have access to like Chef's Toys here, I don't know if you've ever been, but it's amazing. It's for commercial kitchens, but you as a consumer can just go in there and shop too. And so you start to look around and you go like, oh, you mean this stuff that if I go to Sur La Table cost $30 is 3 here? What? Type of thing, right? There's all kind, and they have stuff that you could never get at, the mall,
right?
Store type of thing. So yeah, my limit though to getting stuff is how much space I have.
I've got to store this when I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you do with all these things that you're going to use, like once, right?
Well, I appreciate you, diverting with me and indulging my interest. But going back to our original conversation and wrapping it up, any last words or anything somebody's thinking about getting into the marketing industry?
Passion. You can't just say it as I want to get into the marketing industry. Right? You've got to be passionate about a specific targeted thing and go deep in that direction. If you want to be in social media and be a social media specialist, right? Be the best at that. My teams that I've always tried to build, I have kind of a special ops mentality on the teams that I want to build, right? I want to have a bunch of specialists, right, that have enough overlap that somebody can actually communicate with the other one and have some expertise and be able to talk back and forth. But for the most part, I want to know that you're the expert in this, and I'm going to trust your judgment on this. You're the expert on this, right? So what we don't want is to have this broad picture of, I do marketing. I want to know what you are the best in the world at and go deep on that.
If somebody's got an interest or wants to get some more information, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. So Fred at VERT.fit, and it's .fit, not .com. So it's .fit, VERT, VERT.fit, Fred. Yeah.
And I'll put that in the
great
episode notes. But I appreciate your time, sir.
Yeah, or find me on LinkedIn or whatever. It was great. Thanks for having me on.
I didn't mean to cut you off. So you're also on LinkedIn.
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Just make sure that you mention that you heard me on the show so I know, and it's not just hey, so-and-so wants to join your LinkedIn.
Again, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.